Live service experiences is what this AAA gaming industry has embraced. Sure, many developers want to bring continuous enjoyable content to their audiences, but it's important to understand that many of the executives at the top, the actual shot callers, don't care about any of that. What they really want and care about is the consistent revenue flow, which is fueled by these live service games' microtransaction sales that ultimately appeases the precious investors. One of the problems with this business model has become obvious these last number of years. We've witnessed some of gaming's best and biggest development studios release $60 unfinished rubbish with the promise that things will improve someday. A larger issue that doesn't get discussed enough is how certain publishers like Activision have had a difficult financial year with their star franchise not performing all that well, and their answer thus far is getting more and more predatory with Call of Duty's monetization. They will not slow down with Black Ops 4 and certainly will impact the upcoming Modern Warfare. Today though, I wanted to discuss the latest on 3 of the bigger live service experiences that have released in the last year. That includes Red Dead Redemption 2 Online, Anthem, and Fallout 76. These titles define perfectly where this gaming industry is headed and why I am concerned for the future. But before we get to that, if you haven't already, do consider subscribing for all the latest gaming news and turn notifications on so you don't miss out on any new content. Nonetheless, we're going to start with BioWare's Anthem, which I think it's safe to say this game has been forgotten by a lot of people for good reason. It released in a state that felt rushed, with the biggest piece of endgame content, the Cataclysm, not even included day one, but in a roadmap which ended up having most of its content, including the Cataclysm, indefinitely delayed. We still have no date on that right now. Anthem at release received very mediocre user and critic reviews, with a lot of people thinking things would get better soon because there was a well-established foundation, but obviously that's not what happened. In April, Kotaku released an inside report exposing just how mismanaged this game has been since it began development 7 years ago, and since Anthem launched, the problems and debacles have been consistent. We've had numerous developer lies and excuses, very real downgrades concerning bugs, wonky communication, a poor handling of everything loot, and really just an uncertain future for this game. Anthem was not a top seller. The reported sales numbers were far from impressive, and more importantly, did not meet Electronic Arts' very high expectations. Microtransaction sales were and have been non-existent, largely due to the lackluster store, and for a while, because of these factors, I really have questioned if there is a future. Back in late May, it was reported that Anthem had slipped outside of Xbox's top 50 most played games, meaning there was less than 2,500 active Xbox players left. That was a month ago. Interest in Anthem has been slumping for a while now. As I've pointed out on Twitter, almost nobody is streaming this game anymore. All of this chaos factors into one important question that must be asked. How long will Electronic Arts stick with this game? We saw how fast EA abandoned support for Mass Effect Andromeda a few years ago due to lower than expected sales, and also a chaotic mismanaged development, so is that Anthem's destiny? EA CEO Andrew Wilson appears to be sticking with BioWare for now, but I will add this is the same guy who said the same thing about Mass Effect Andromeda, and less than a week later it was reported Mass Effect was being put on hiatus, Andromeda DLC was cancelled, and BioWare Montreal was being scaled down, which ultimately was just them being shut down. So I'll be honest, it's hard to believe what he says. Anyway, recently speaking to GameDaily.biz, Andrew Wilson pretty much said that Anthem's core premise, the nuts and bolts of what the game is built around, makes it an easier decision to keep investing. EA is far from ready to pull the plug on BioWare's foray into cooperative action. Instead, Wilson suggested Anthem's path forward is similar to Star Wars Battlefront 2's Road to Redemption, voicing confidence in the world BioWare created as the seed for a long-running franchise. The problem with this response is the fact that the reason people stuck with Battlefront 2 was because it was Star Wars. Even with all the controversy over the loot boxes, it sold 9 million copies by the end of January 2018. Anthem, on the other hand, is a brand new franchise that sold far less than Battlefront 2, and if we're being honest, Battlefront 2 didn't have many issues outside of its horrible business model. It was a decent game ruined by greed. Andrew Wilson would continue giving further insight into his supposed commitment to BioWare if we believe that at the very core the world wasn't compelling people, if we believed at the very core the characters weren't compelling for people, or the javelin suits weren't compelling, or traversing the world and participating in the world wasn't compelling, then provided we hadn't made promises to our players, we might not invest further. IP lives for generations and runs in these 7 to 10 year cycles, so if I think about Anthem on a 7 to 10 year cycle, it may not have had the start that many of us wanted, including our players. I feel like that team is really going to get there with something special and something great because they've demonstrated they can. I mean, the last time BioWare showed they can deliver something special is arguably in 2014, which was 5 years ago, although based on Kotaku's reporting, it seems they got lucky with Dragon Age Inquisition. I've held firm on my position that Anthem was okay. It's not terrible, but not good, with the highlight really just being the ability to fly around like Iron Man. Now, the characters in Anthem are terribly written and mainly forgettable. Javelin suits don't have enough customization in terms of armor sets. The open world all looks the exact same and is extremely boring to traverse. Andrew Wilson is attempting to circle around what he really wishes to say, and that is that Electronic Arts will stick with Anthem because of the potential revenue from microtransactions. You better believe if Anthem gets revived, there will be a revamped store with more options because this definitely will not last. So, to the final comments coming from Andrew Wilson, he explains how BioWare has to evolve and think about 12-year-old gamers of today. He specifically says there are kids today who are 12-year-olds who were not around when BioWare started making games, and they have different expectations of what a BioWare game should be in the context of the world they've grown up in. As a result of that, BioWare has to evolve and has to expand and has to test the elasticity of that brand. The teams at BioWare will continue to work every day and listen to their players, old and new, and seek to deliver on the promises they've made to those players. That's what you're seeing with Anthem today. The gamers of today probably don't think so highly of BioWare, as they haven't exactly been delivering, good games these last couple of years. And plus, BioWare isn't even valuing Anthem player feedback, instead focusing on influencer feedback. The road ahead for Anthem will be interesting. As it stands, the Anthem released in February has fallen flat. It simply is dead in the ground right now. Andrew Wilson mentions wanting 7 to 10 more years of this franchise, and right now I find that hard to believe. I fully expect whenever Cataclysms get a release date, BioWare will go hard, trying to bring interest back with new content. But will there be an audience to actually play any of that content? That's a very big question right now. And I think internally, Electronic Arts is probably committed to this next content push for Anthem, which likely will revamp the loot system, but after that, I bet you it depends on the size of the player base and the money they are making from the new microtransactions that are inevitable. All of this will factor into if Anthem has a future or not, but for now, BioWare is working hard, barely communicating on a game that players and journalists have called pretty much dead and hopeless, with an audience that has almost entirely disappeared just 4 months after launch. As Andrew Wilson alluded to in his interview, BioWare and EA are committed to the promises that they have made, but beyond that, it really depends how this upcoming content performs and if Anthem truly regains an audience and starts, making money. If not, you better believe most resources will be pulled and more attention will be given to their next live service experiences, which maybe that includes an Anthem 2. Now, to Fallout 76, for a live service experience, despite its disastrous first few months of life, things have been slowly improving. Bethesda Austin definitely deserves some praise for getting this game on a good path, but at the same time, my issue with this gaming industry is the normalization of launching full-price games unfinished with tons of technical issues. It's unfortunate that the first reaction many people have to a developer purposefully rushing a mediocre at best unfinished live service game out the door is that this is how they all launch. There's no reason to get upset or criticize because it'll be good in a few years. Bethesda Game Studios' Todd Howard pretty much admitted that they knew Fallout 76 was not a good game come launch day, and they released it anyway. But at E3 2019, Bethesda did respond to the disastrous launch.
Great to see everybody. We have had an incredibly exciting year at Bethesda Game Studios. Given some of that excitement, impressed you're still here. A type of game we'd never done before, had a lot of difficulties at launch, and we got a lot of well-deserved criticism.
Essentially, Bethesda chose joking about the problems and not getting specific with really any of the various debacles. This has and is Bethesda's way of addressing Fallout 76's very rough start. Todd Howard and other Bethesda employees have done this for months at PAX East, during interviews, and at E3 2019, although Pete Hines, the senior vice president at Bethesda, who promised Fallout 76 would be cosmetic only, also gave his thoughts, and I will add, I find it frustrating how not one journalist asked Hines about him lying to players. Anyway, in an interview with Jeff Keighley during E3, Pete Hines had this to say.
Our approach in general, we can't run from it, we can't hide from it. That was our approach on Elder Scrolls Online. You just mentioned Elder Scrolls Online, what is success? That was not the narrative of that game when we first launched it on PC. There was a lot of like, well, this isn't Skyrim, or this isn't what I'm looking for in my Elder Scrolls. We are not ones to give up just because we hit some bumps or challenges.
Right.
And like with Elder Scrolls Online, where the team kept at it, made lots of improvements, changed fundamentally how that game worked. And it has been, I mean, honestly, it is remarkable what a success that game has been.
Now, I don't know if this is a strategy, but it's not just Pete Hines who keeps mentioning how other live service games launched with problems. Todd Howard has done the same, and I just find that as a pathetic excuse. This is a studio that led by example for years with their single-player open-world games, and the fact that they are using excuses like multiplayer was new for us, or other live service games launched with problems is just kind of disappointing. If you truly wanted to address Fallout 76's mess of a launch, you should own up to your mistakes and actually get specific. Instead, I just keep hearing excuses. Now, Pete Hines just days ago was interviewed by GamesIndustry.biz and gave more of his thoughts on their mission to save Fallout 76, and it should not be surprising, but like in that clip I just played, there are a boatload of mentions to the Elder Scrolls Online. Pete Hines begins by discussing how giving up has never been an option with Fallout 76, it's just in our DNA. I appreciate there might be folks who are tempted to throw up their hands and call it quits, but that's just not how we're wired. We believed in it. The fact that it didn't go the way that we expected and it had issues that maybe we should have foreseen and should have planned for doesn't mean we didn't believe in what the game was and could become. And I mean, if you truly believed in Fallout 76, you probably wouldn't reverse the decision on big features like human NPCs. I fully expected that to save this game, human NPCs were needed, but I guess Bethesda didn't know that until the game launched. But let's be real, of course Bethesda did not plan on giving up on Fallout 76. This is their live service experience which keeps this Fallout franchise alive and making money for years to come, until Fallout 5 eventually comes, and who knows how many years until that even begins development. But continuing on, Pete Hines next boldly states Bethesda Game Studios is a team that's made a lot of very highly successful things. Still, in my opinion, they are one of the most respected and decorated studios in the world. There is an element of pride, not in a we don't quit and give up way, but we need to show and prove that we're going to stick with it, and that we don't just hit some adversity and throw up our hands and go, oh, this is too hard, let's do something else. That's not how we think about things, either as a publisher or as a studio. Well, I mean, that kind of was the case with the original Prey 2, wasn't it? Also, respected studios is not how I would describe Bethesda Game Studios nowadays. I think a better choice of words is a studio that has a lot to prove, not with Fallout 76, but more Starfield. If Bethesda truly is listening, they should know how people feel about the outdated creation engine. But next, this is when ESO begins to be brought up by Pete Hines. For the Fallout team, literally none of those folks worked on the Elder Scrolls Online, so it's definitely new to them, but it definitely wasn't new to all of us. We as a marketing, community, and PR team try and take a lot of what we learned working on ESO and came to them with things that we think we ought to do that we're not doing. Whether it's the Inside the Vault, the blog updates that we do, or the way we approach patch notes. They're just different to the way that we've done patch notes before. We're trying to offer more transparency and communication and being more visible than we used to be in the Bethesda Game Studios threads, forums, and subreddits. To that transparency part, I would ask how about we get an answer for why Bethesda broke their cosmetic-only promise. But Pete Hines would continue mentioning that he feels Fallout 76 is very much like ESO, but honestly I just don't really see the comparison, as ESO had problems for sure, but they were nowhere near the amount of issues consumers had with Fallout 76. A game riddled in controversy controversy every few days when it launched. Right now though, I see a lot of praise for Fallout 76, and that's largely due to the nuclear winter battle royale mode, and even I have to admit it's pretty fun. A big thumbs up on that mode, one I've invested quite a few hours playing. But to the rest of Fallout 76, it's still not very good. Maybe that changes with private servers and modding coming down the road and human NPCs later this year, but for now I really don't think Bethesda has done a good job being as transparent as they are claiming about the issues that plagued Fallout 76 at launch, whether that be the terrible refund policy, the canvas bag debacle that finally was just resolved just days ago, the greedy microtransaction prices that really hasn't been resolved, the data leak duplication glitches, and so on and so forth. Really just too many to mention at this point. Finally though, we move on to Red Dead Redemption 2 Online, something I haven't really talked about in the last few months. Unlike Bethesda and Electronic Arts, Rockstar Games is not as talkative about really anything. They are very secretive, but I will say that I am happy with how the online has progressed and how it no longer has that ridiculous beta label, which was really just there to shield them from criticism. As I said before, that beta label really concerned me because I feel many more AAA game studios will try using that fake label to avoid criticism. Either way, Rockstar in recent months has added more online story missions, which feature more interesting things to do within them. There's more stranger missions with established characters like Sadie Adler, new game modes, weapons, clothing, and most importantly, poker has been added. Red Dead Online is just okay right now. I still don't necessarily care for the gunplay, which feels often frustrating, but if I'm being honest, I just kinda wish Rockstar Games was investing on more single-player content. It's quite clear now that this is not what they wish to do. Red Dead Online is featuring quite a bit of narrative content, whether that be the story missions or unique stranger missions, and sometime in the future, roles, allowing you to really immerse yourself into your online character. All of this sounds fine, but as someone who really just plays Rockstar games for the single-player aspect, I have to say I'm disappointed this is being treated like Grand Theft Auto 5 again. Sure, there is story content within the online, but it's just not comparable in quality to the phenomenal single-player story and characters. That's why it's such a shame that Rockstar has decided not to support the single-player post-launch with any new content. I felt from the beginning this was the perfect title to expand on the story, whether that be with side characters like Sadie or Charles, or with a prequel featuring more Arthur Morgan, or heck, even an Undead Nightmare 2 could have been a blast, but I'm guessing the Rockstar executives in charge find that is too costly compared to building an online with less expensive resources that will be played for years to come with players spending tons of money on microtransactions regularly. Never say never, I would love to be wrong, but 9 months after launch there's been zero indication that Rockstar Games is interested in expanding on Red Dead Redemption 2 story mode at all. They did fortunately fix the HDR and ambient occlusion issues, but based on Rockstar's history and the narrative content already present within the online, I say it's far more likely in the next few months Dutch van der Linde and or Arthur Morgan make an appearance with maybe an Undead Online Nightmare update to come. Additionally, the Mexico region part of the map has not been utilized yet, so that very well could be something introduced to the online as an expansion sometime in the future. Time will tell how well that plan goes, but thus far Rockstar's parent company Take-Two Interactive has only had praise and excitement for Red Dead Online's performance thus far. So, as I see it, like Grand Theft Auto 5 and GTA Online, with Red Dead Online apparently rising, most likely means no Red Dead Redemption 2 single-player story DLC, which years after Rockstar abandoned Grand Theft Auto 5 story DLC to go all in on the cash cow online, maybe that should have been expected from the start. Times have certainly changed in this gaming industry, with priorities shifting to what financially has the biggest upside rather than what creatively makes the most sense. But right now in this gaming industry, more and more gaming developers are jumping on the live service train. We have Crystal Dynamics going that way with their Avengers game, Ninja Theory with Bleeding Edge, maybe Arcane with Deathloop, and reportedly Rocksteady Games is going that way with their next title. This industry continues to embrace these games because I think it's the safest bet for success, but I'd argue there are too many games trying to exist for a decade, overstaying their welcome, and I really do envision major problems to come when almost every game publisher is jumping on this trend expecting Fortnite or GTA Online like money, when in reality the success these games likely will achieve is closer to Fallout 76 and Anthem. I say that mainly because I definitely feel we're going to see many more AAA unfinished $60 mediocre at best, loaded with microtransactions day one dumpster fire live service games in the future. This really is just the beginning. But anyway, what are your thoughts on 3 of the bigger live service games to launch within the last year? Are you still playing any of them, enjoying them or not? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.